we're going to go ahead and start our next session. We'll ask our presenter to bring up his screen. His name is Mike Bober, and he is the president and CEO for Pet Advocacy Nation. His talk today will be pet store litigation and market trends. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to be here today. And let me start off by saying thank you to everyone who's spoken up to this point. I have found the morning's presentations to be very interesting and eye-opening, and I hope everybody else has as well. As was said previously, my name is Mike Bober. I'm the president and CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network. We are a 501c6 trade association that represents the broader pet care community. Now that includes everyone from breeders and distributors of companion animals to food and product manufacturers to retailers, product distributors, service providers like groomers and things like that. So we actually, we live in kind of a strange place where we talk to regulated entities, licensees who are your constituents, but we also talk to the folks who are 1 and 2 steps removed from them. And as such, we have the opportunity to see a lot of things that are sort of linkages and connections that maybe cross over from one community to another. So our mission at the Pet Advocacy Network is to basically to represent all of these people. Oh, sorry about that. Our mission is to champion everyone in our community, responsible pet professionals with expertise and integrity. And our goal in doing so is to get to a place where we live in a world where there's a future for expanded opportunities to enjoy the companionship of healthy and well-treated pets, in which responsible pet professionals are respected and seen as having the best interest of pets in mind. In other words, we are here to be partners in pet care with all of you. And that's something that we take very seriously. As you can see, we don't just represent small mammal as a category. We actually cover 6 categories of companion animals. That's dogs and cats, birds and fish, reptiles and amphibians, and then small mammals across a wide variety of species. We advocate for pets. That's why we're known as the Pet Advocacy Network. We also advocate for pet owners and pet professionals. And in doing so, we try to bring hopefully some opportunities for conversation, for dialogue, and really just for collaboration from among everyone who's interested in seeing the best interest of pets and the animals that we all care for really rising to the forefront. For a lot of people, advocacy is what we're known for. We are seen as sort of the legislative and regulatory voice of the pet care community, but we actually exist not just as a group that's there to lobby or to advocate. We also operate as a liaison to provide linkages between the pet care community and the different aspects of the community, but also outside of the community for the community to the Department of Agriculture. We work with you all on a wide range of issues, including opportunities to set up briefings and question and answer sessions when issues like e-caniculi come up and there's a need to engage with licensees and stakeholders. We also are working with you all in an ongoing fashion to prepare breeders of bird species for the implementation of the new regulatory standards and licensure that affect them. We also work as a liaison to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We've been involved with them in their efforts to address antimicrobial resistance, as well as to promote a One Health mindset that looks at the intersections of human, animal, and environmental health to make sure that that everything that we do has an impact across all parts of our environment. And we work on issues dealing with zoonotic disease prevention. In fact, it's kind of a co-equal issue for us to our legislative efforts, is to be that that liaison and that clearinghouse for issues that deal with zoonotic disease prevention, especially. In that vein, we work with our allies at the National Association of State Public Health Veterinarians, groups like the American Veterinary Medical Association and the North American Veterinary Conference. And then we also work separately on another set of issues with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to try to cut down on the incidences of, or the possibility of release of potentially invasive species into the wild. We do this through a public-private partnership called Habitatitude. Habitatitude is a program that seeks to educate prospective pet owners and purchasers of aquatic plants to have them do their thinking and really go through the process up front to make sure that they're not taking on something that they're not prepared to care for, or that they haven't thought through what they'll do in the future if they find themselves unable to care for something. Our goal is to basically to remove the conditions that allow for possible release into the wild to begin with. If people are making smarter choices about the pets they bring into their homes, they're more likely to develop lifelong relationships that stand the test of anything that could come their way. We're proud of this. We do see ourselves, as I said, not just as lobbyists, not just as advocates. We see ourselves as partners. And to that end, we're very grateful for the opportunity today to offer what we're seeing in recent months as it relates to legislative and regulatory trends, as well as to give a little bit of a look ahead to what we're seeing in terms of retail trends as well. We're proud of the fact that we do work with breeders, USDA licensees, and breeders and distributors to make sure that where possible, we're encouraging them to follow the animal care guidelines by the book. And actually to take it even steps further in some cases. Earlier this year, we released an update, a revision to our small animal care standards, which is a document that we've created with internal feedback and input from stakeholders throughout the pet care community. And we share that with breeders, distributors, everyone in our community who does come into contact with small animals, including small mammals, birds, and reptiles and amphibians. And that's a document that is available on our website for anyone who wanted to take a look at it. So let's start off a little bit with a little bit of a conversation about the market. Actually, earlier today, you heard that and I think we all knew from anecdotal experience that ownership of small animals spiked during the pandemic. Now, we know this not just anecdotally because there's a biannual survey that's conducted by the American Pet Products Association known as the National Pet Owners Survey. Now, this is conducted every 2 years, so it gives us a great opportunity to look at trend lines. And one of the things that we saw in the 2023-2024 edition is that pet ownership has spiked not just across the board, but specifically within the small mammal community, the small mammal category. And I think the reasons for that are several, but certainly one of them is the fact that these are species that were particularly suited to people bringing them into their homes during the pandemic, looking at ways to sort of enjoy the health benefits of the human-animal bond, while also dealing with the fact that quarters were closer, people were confined, and they had the opportunity and the need to be at home more frequently. So this is about 5% of pet owners nationwide are identified as owning small animals, small mammals, and that translates to about 6.7 million households. So that gives you an idea across the entirety of the range of small mammal species that we're talking about a pretty significant number of American households here. One of the things that we are seeing, and again, I think in the presentation earlier this morning, there was a reference to this as well. Demand for these species has started to tail off, and in fact, the demand is significantly falling off in certain places. But I think the reasoning for this is exactly what you'd expect, with people returning to life similar to what it was prior to the pandemic. We're seeing people less interested in having an animal around them full-time, or in some cases, frankly, they want to focus on caring for the animals they've already brought into their homes. Now that's, I think, a positive thing for us on balance, because we are also seeing decreases in the number of animals that are available as breeders are exiting the market, and as it's becoming harder and harder in some cases to actually find animals. We are seeing sort of a leveling effect between supply and demand. That being said, we're interested to note that over the past 4 years, especially, there's been a demographic shift as well within the trend lines for ownership of small mammals. The greatest increase has actually been among childless young adults. This is something that's a little bit of a change because, as many of you know, small mammals were frequently seen as sort of starter family pets, pets that could be brought into a household where children were present, and it could be a way for the family to work together to learn the importance of responsible pet care. Now what we're seeing is that in some cases, millennials who don't have children in their home or who are unattached do see the benefits of animal ownership and want to experience it, but don't necessarily have the space, or they're renting, or they may have other circumstances that prohibit them from bringing their home, bringing something like a dog or a cat into their home. And so for a lot of them, small mammals really are a wonderful opportunity for them to experience the benefits of pet ownership. Millennials are followed by Gen Z, and that's about 29% of the market. Beyond that, Gen X, and these are obviously older individuals, many of whom have families with children. And then finally, we're seeing baby boomers continuing to age out of the overall ownership picture. Most of the small animals that are acquired, small mammals that are acquired, are coming from pet stores still. And that's something that is actually a distinct difference from some of the larger animals and some of the other species that are common household pets. The reality is there's just not a very robust network for breeders of small mammals to sell directly to the public. And so you do see kind of a reliance on distributors, reliance on retail pet stores, and that creates a situation where we have benefits and drawbacks. There are benefits for the community writ large because it's easier for us to identify trends and to identify challenges when they arise. It creates challenges on the back end, however, because the somewhat distributed network of breeders means that it's a little bit harder to trace things all the way back to their source when necessary. It creates situations where it's harder to gather the breeding community for educational sessions and things like that, because they just they're not necessarily as plugged in as a community like dog breeders, who have much more robust communications networks and easier gathering points. Now, I will say that that rabbits are an exception to this, and an exception that I actually personally experienced. Fewer than 30% of rabbits come from stores. More than with any other small mammal, they are coming from breeders directly in some cases. And also, I think 10 to 12% of rabbits do tend to come from shelters. That was the experience that I had. We actually adopted a rabbit from one of the local animal welfare leagues in our area, and was a wonderful experience for us. So these market circumstances lead to a trend that you would think would be a little bit self-explanatory, and that is there's actually been an increase in spending per pet, per small animal, even as the demand for the animals has gone up. And that increased spending reflects interest in a variety of product types. You're seeing increased interest even among small animals in premium food items and organic items, organic Timothy hay, things like that. You've seen a significant growth in the treat and supplement market. for small mammals, with a number of companies bringing out entire product lines that address the nutritional and supplemental needs of a wide range of small mammals. It's no longer a one-size-fits-all category. You've seen a move toward enclosures, in some cases that mimic a more natural environment, in other cases that really kind of look to show the luxuriating effect that pet owners are having on their animals across the board. It's sort of an increasing push to give the pet the best of what's out there. Pets as some reflection of people's own values and own desire to experience luxury. So with enclosures, we are seeing two very different trend lines. One is enclosures that really are looking to incorporate significant enrichment and opportunities for animals to enjoy an environment that is much more akin to what they might want to have in a natural setting, and others that really are just looking to kind of put on the Ritz, so to speak. Finally, and this is one that this is a trend that I think we're all recognizing is significantly positive. There is a real push for an increased diversity, as well as an increased focus on enrichment materials. This isn't just toys. This isn't just wood nibblers and things like that. This is items that provide elements of stimulation, elements of challenge, in some cases, opportunities for increased cardiovascular exercise. This is something that I think we are seeing as a reflection of a greater understanding and a greater commitment to animal well-being. And that's something that I think we're watching very closely, because I think it's something that really does kind of underpin a lot of what it is that we're trying to do on the educational side. So with that being said, the trend lines we're seeing, again, if I can just kind of encapsulate it for everyone, the trend lines we're seeing are sort of a stabilized to potentially slightly decreasing demand for these animals. However, the ownership rates are higher than they've ever been. And so the opportunities are going to persist for at least the next few years here for the pet care community, our folks, to continue to market new and different opportunities for people to engage with their animals' well-being. The other element of what I was asked to talk about today is legislative and regulatory trends. And I want to start off this part of this by saying I recognize the context of this particular presentation is something that's been put on by the Department of Agriculture, and as such, I'm going to be very cognizant of and cautious of anything that could be seen as attempting to share our perspective. This is really just educational. This is meant to be an opportunity to share information about trends that we've seen, rather than an opportunity to advocate for any particular position on these issues. Anyone who's interested in discussing these issues with me offline, you're welcome to reach out to me. I know there's a number of folks who are participants in this that are parts of other advocacy groups as well. And so, I welcome the opportunity to have conversations on these. This is really just meant to be an overview. And so if I stray from that a little bit, I do apologize. And I do want our hosts at the Department of Agriculture to know that we appreciate the fact that some of the items we're going to be talking about are items that for better or worse do directly address USDA operations. So with that, we have 4 categories of legislative and regulatory trends that I believe that we've been paying close attention to, really, and I think it does go back to kind of the peak of the pandemic, and what we've watched is there's been sort of this slow cranking up of certain items. The first of those is sales restrictions and bans. This was also touched on previously today. We are seeing these issues expand to deal with small mammals and especially guinea pigs at a rate that is significantly increased from any time in the past. Historically, sales bans have they started out targeting dogs or dogs and cats. Over time, they've been expanded in a lot of communities to include rabbits as well. It seems that the next species to be included, not quite as a baseline, but definitely as a regular feature, is guinea pigs. The efforts by New York City to ban the sale of guinea pigs in pet stores are a reflection of, as was said before, increased intake in shelters and rescues, and it does tie into that issue of the importance of socialization for guinea pigs, but at the same time, the risk of socialization when you're dealing with mixed sex pairs. This is something that I think is an ongoing issue for all of us, and with numbers being what they are, and with difficulties of successful spay-neuter programs really being an opportunity here, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of communities, especially in more urban areas, pushing for restrictions on sales or limitations on sales, or standalone guidelines as they relate to guinea pigs. Multi-species bans are nothing new. We see these in large parts of the country. One of the places that we've seen this most frequently lately is in Michigan. Michigan has had a number of communities introduce sales bans that don't just address dogs and cats. They go so far as to incorporate things like large reptiles, long-lived birds, and certain small mammal species. And then beyond that, we do see continued efforts to go back and add guinea pigs in places like New York City, where previous bans have already been in place, as a matter of kind of housekeeping. Now, this is, in our eyes, something that I think needs to be examined and discussed a bit further, because as I pointed out previously, small mammals are different than other species that are regulated by the department and licensed. Breeders are licensed, in that the majority of the animals that are making their way into people's homes are coming from pet stores. The opposite is true in situations like dogs, for example, and cats. And so with that being the case, when sales of guinea pigs are banned in pet stores, that is going to have a much more profound impact on the overall numbers of ownership than in situations where a ban on the sale of dogs is passed. In many cases, there isn't even a pet store in a community that is selling dogs in the first place. And so those bans don't tend to have as direct an impact as something like a ban on small mammals is going to have on opportunities for ownership. Because again, prospective pet owners can't just go to a local breeder to find their hamster or guinea pig necessarily. So that's something that I think is going to need to be a topic of consideration and discussion, both among the breeding community, among the distributor community, and among the pet retail community. And I think there are opportunities for all of us to look for ways to address this that are respectful of animal well-being, but also are making sure that we're not inadvertently creating situations where people are being prevented from finding their ideal companion. The next legislative item that we've been looking at is standards of care. Now, that's a very broad topic, and I intentionally did it as such. One of the things that I think falls under this category is Animal Welfare Act enforcement. And we're actually seeing this being addressed and brought up in a number of pieces of legislation at the federal level. that are actually seeking to, in some way, either modify the Animal Welfare Act or modify ways in which, again, with apologies to our hosts, the Department of Agriculture oversees and enforces the act or the regulations that are attached to it. This is something that that I think speaks to, again, our continuing and evolving understanding of what's best for these animals, and our desire to make sure that animals are receiving appropriate care. I do, however, think that in a lot of cases, and you can see it in the language that's used to discuss these bills, it does seem like there's a it's almost as though small mammals are an afterthought. That the regulated species encompassed by the Animal Welfare Act are in some cases kind of being all lumped in with a topic that's actually being introduced because the intent is to address dog breeders. And that's something that I think we all need to take a look at, because, you know, again, the relationship between a breeder of small mammals and the Department of Agriculture is very different than the relationship between a dog breeder and the department. So this is something where I think Animal Welfare Act enforcement and the regulations that are used to implement the act, this is a topic that I think we all need to be part of that conversation, because I think there are ways forward here that we can all agree on, but we need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that doesn't inadvertently catch up broad categories of species in something that may have originally been intended specifically for one species. The other standards of care issue that we've seen touched on in a number of places, including rulemaking by the department, was regulations and recommendations regarding environmental enrichment. And as I said, this is a situation where the legislative and regulatory efforts actually coincide quite nicely with the continuing development of the retail market. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to kind of sort of reinforce one another's best efforts here. The next subject that we look at as a regulatory and a legislative trend, and one that I think affects both retailers and breeders alike, is disease prevention. I touched on earlier a conversation that we hosted with the department to help bring guinea pig breeders together to discuss the topic of E. caniculi. This is something that we've done in the past as well with issues like rat bite fever and other issues dealing with small mammals. This is something that we consider to be very important. Disease prevention, there's a need to approach this in a way that recognizes that we have finite resources to bring to bear on the broader topic. Zoonotic diseases, especially those that are particularly novel or problematic, these are things that we need to be prepared for. We do not want to get caught flat-footed. However, with a finite amount of resources and with a finite opportunity to focus on these topics, it is very important for us to make sure that that we're not inadvertently creating such a broad mandate that something as ubiquitous as salmonella is treated the same with the same level of severity of something like a novel coronavirus. This is something that I think you've seen several groups attempt to kind of thread that needle in their approaches to zoonotic disease prevention, especially in the days immediately in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic. We saw a number of different legislative approaches that were proposed to attempt to get the country better prepared for the next outbreak. And that's something that I think, again, we want to be very careful with. We do believe that that between increased incidence of antimicrobial resistance and increased incidence of habitat degradation. There is absolutely concern that that we are being put into situations where new and novel zoonotic diseases are likely to be introduced. We want to make sure that resources are available to fight those and to fight those effectively. And doing that means that we distinguish between zoonotic diseases that are already well understood and well addressed within the community versus those that are new and novel. One of the approaches that's being used to address this is animal importation. We've seen for about 2 years now a restriction on importation of animals from countries with differing rabies protocols on the part of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We've also seen an ongoing effort to introduce something called the Healthy Dog Importation Act at the federal level that would attempt to streamline and better organize the ways in which animals coming in from outside the country are reviewed and quarantined and addressed. Would avoid some situations where there's some overlapping and not so overlapping jurisdictional issues, and make sure that there's a clear protocol in place. So this is something for sure that we're working on. And then the fourth category that we're looking at is ways in which small mammals, especially those that are known as exotic species, those that are outside of the mainstream categories of rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, that ways in which they can be looked at as either invasive species or potentially invasive species. The ferret that you see right there, for example, is illegal to be owned in New York City. It's illegal to be owned in the state of California. That is because those jurisdictions consider these species to be potentially invasive, and enough so that they are continuing to prohibit their sale within their jurisdictions. On the topic of invasive species right now, there's 2 key items that we've been watching and engaging on. The first is the whitelist approach to permitted species. This is something that you're seeing play out literally across the country, around the world right now. In Europe, there are a number of countries that are engaged in discussions about species that should or should not be allowed into through their borders, and here in the United States, in a number of key jurisdictions, most notably Florida, we're having a very similar conversation right now. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission is actively considering different approaches to permitting species from that are non-native, with the goal of preventing incidents similar to the release of certain species that are now ubiquitous in Florida. And the challenge here, of course, is when we run a whitelist approach, an approach that says, you know, these are the permitted species, everything else is embargoed. We run the risk of several types of confusion, where similar species have species have similar taxa that result in situations where they can be easily confused from one to another. We have other situations where a species actually goes through multiple name changes over the years. We've got one species or one category of fish that have been known by, I think, 7 different taxa over the years. So whitelists in and of themselves create some confusion, some oversight issues, but also they rely on risk assessments. And this is something that I think we're all keeping a close eye on, because obviously the risk assessment that is used to determine the potential for a certain species to become invasive is going to have a very significant effect on what species are and are not permitted. And so this is something that we watch with a fair amount of care. We're actually involved in the technical advisory group that's working down in Florida to attempt to help provide guidance as to the permissibility of certain species. The other issue that we see in the invasive species world is definitions, definitions of things like wild and exotic, terms that while they have a very real and specific scientific meaning, also have a sort of a meaning that is one that's sort of been given to them by the public. You know, the sort of the general feeling that is created by the use of the word exotic pet, for example. We live in an era, you know, sort of after Tiger King, where an exotic pet, in a lot of cases, conjures an image in people's minds of things like big cats, crocodilians, things that go far beyond those 6 categories of companion animals that I spelled out earlier on. However, it is definitionally correct that these other species be known as exotic species. And so we see several states, New York, Pennsylvania, others looking at ways to refine those definitions or to overlay their own definitions of certain terms, carve out specific exemptions. For example, in Pennsylvania, anything that is seen as a companion animal is by nature not wild and exotic. We have things like domesticated as another phrase that's been used. And as states and communities attempt to create these additional sort of supplemental definitions, we really do run the risk of creating a patchwork of terms, or a patchwork of understanding of terms that can actually have very real consequences for certain species and their ability to move either across state or even across county lines. This is something that I think we would all benefit from a certain amount of effort to harmonize nomenclature and to make sure that that everyone understands what we're talking about and what we mean when we say certain things. So these are the 4 key topics that we've been working on. Again, sales restrictions and bans, standards of care, disease prevention, and invasive species. And these things do apply to a wide range of small mammals, not just to guinea pigs, which I know are a primary focus of this particular symposium. This is something that I think is an opportunity for all of us to kind of work together, to break down some of the existing walls and silos that separate the breeding community by way of distributors from the retail community, but also those of us on the regulatory side as well. These are topics that I think speak to a need for sound science, a need for overall conversation and oversight, and a bit of a restraint to avoid one-size-fits-all solutions that might sound good on the surface, but ultimately create problems of unintended consequences on the back end. Like I said, my organization, the Pet Advocacy Network, oops, sorry about that. My organization, the Pet Advocacy Network, works on these issues at the federal, state, local, and occasionally even the international level. If anyone is interested in talking to us about specific topics, I'm happy to chat with you for sure. My contact information is right there. But I do want to make sure, again, that, in the context of today's symposium, I really am just trying to provide this as an opportunity for our perspective on the issue sets that we're seeing. And again, that's out of respect for our hosts. So with that, I'm happy to take questions. If it's something I can't talk with you all online about, I will try to make arrangements with you to talk about it offline. And I would also ask our hosts, if there's something that that you feel that we should take somewhere else, please let us know, and I'm happy to do so.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We do have a question. What are some of the trends you see with the pet bird market, and what predictions about the market are you expecting?
That's an excellent question. Obviously, for all of us here, the move to the new regulatory regime, the oversight of bird breeding, is something that has been a long time coming, and now that it's here, it's experiencing its share of growing pains. I know that the first 6 months of the rollout process have been focused on getting current licensees, people who are license holders for other species, up to speed and signed off on as also being licensed to sell and distribute birds. And I understand that generally speaking, that's gone quite smoothly. Though I know there have been some hiccups here and there. I expect that the next 6 months, and actually now it's 5 months and 2 weeks, really are going to be the deciding factor on where we see the availability of birds heading. This is going to be the time where people who are not existing licensees need to go through that pre-inspection process with the department, need to determine whether they are exempt or whether they're required to be licensed, and if so, kind of putting the new standards to the test. I think we have been very gratified to see the approach that was taken, with performance-based standards generally being the order of business, and with indications that there are multiple paths to appropriate animal care. But obviously the implementation of that and the oversight is going to be telling. I think from our perspective internally, within the pet care community, we are expecting to see some growing pains. We are expecting to see some disruptions in availability of certain avian species. In fact, we're already seeing it to some extent. So I would say that what we're going to see is a little bit of a rough patch as people kind of sort out. But then ultimately, I think what you're going to see is a streamlined approach to avian retail that probably in a lot of ways mirrors the small mammal community.
Okay, thank you. Not showing any additional questions. If you have a question, put it in the question box and we'll answer it. Additionally, if you are calling in, just dial *9 and raise your hand, and I can unmute you. You can ask a question that way too. Okay, well, I don't have any more questions, Mike.
Well, great. No, and for us, this is something where we do believe that our role in all of this is to be sort of that liaison or that conduit. We appreciate the opportunities to work with the department, to kind of streamline this and to make sure that that when the breeding community needs to come together, that we do what we can to help facilitate that. But more importantly, we also recognize our role in being that conduit to those secondary and tertiary communities who aren't your licensees and your direct stakeholders. And so we always appreciate the opportunity to be part of spreading the word for these things. So thank you for the opportunity.